This is the Kingdom Movement Podcast, a place where we will explore, through conversation, how discipleship, theology, and community really can transform our world. Hey guys, this is Jake and Paulo back for another episode of the Kingdom Movement Podcast. Last episode we had a great discussion about worship, and Tshiamo's with us again to discuss our next core value, which is family. I'm really excited to dive into this one, but go ahead and say hi guys first.
Hi.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm really excited for this one, and I'm excited to have Tshiamo here because I feel like it's just these three different culture, American, Botswana, and Mozambican, and coming and discuss or talk about family. So I just feel like it's a very
that's true. I didn't even think about that dynamic. Yeah, that's gonna be good. Yeah. So maybe we'll just start off kind of to create. That's a great intro to this question. What does family mean or look like to us, right? Because I think it's really easy for all of us. We take what we know and we say, this is what family is. But honestly, all of us have probably grown up in a very unique to each other family background. You get what I'm saying? Obviously, there's similarities in family, but family dynamics are different for all of us. So what does family mean to you guys? What does it look like? Maybe we'll focus on healthy family. How would you define that, right?
Okay, I will talk about like family and the aspect of my blood relatives and stuff, and then family that I've gained over the years. I think with a healthy family, with my family, I would love to think we are healthy because of communication and the love that is around there. Because we so easily can say, oh, you're not doing this right, and then work on it, not hate each other for it. And I know it's like really small, but like I know my brother and my sister and I don't really bicker and fight. So over the years I know that family is a place where love lives. Yeah. So that's how I viewed my blood family, including like my extended family, because we're all really tight and really close. So it's a place of a community. I know if something is wrong, I can easily go to like my aunt or my uncle and stuff. And then family that I've gained over the years is like, there's parts of my life that my close family or my relatives cannot do for me, but I know certain people have shown up for me, and it's people that have shown me love in ways that I cannot explain, and it's people that have built me to be the person that I am. I think people usually say like it takes a whole community to raise a child, and that community that I've built and I've learned to know now has built me to who I am today. I think that's how I see family. I see family as a place of love and a place where you can easily be corrected in love.
And even what I'm hearing from you is kind of defines and helps shape who you are in a way, right? Yeah, definitely.
I would want you to comment on what she said, the whole community, what did you say? Well, raise a child, take the whole community to raise a child, because I want to understand about your culture.
Bro, I think Hillary Clinton's the one that said it. But no, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, but for me, family, it's kind of funny because for me it was kind of a mix of these two families that I had. I grew up with my grandparents, and then at the end, twice a year I would go and visit my parents and my brothers, and all my siblings and everything. And then in my parents' house, I had all these kind of 15 young people, all together with relatives, cousins and my siblings, we grew up all together because it was two families sharing one big plot of land with each with his house, his kitchen, but we would all play together, So I had this big place, big family, with all 15 young people, I could go and play with them, you know. But then I would go back to my grandparents. It was just my twin sister and I and my cousin. So it was only three of us. So for me, it was just this mix of two sides, you know. So now that I grew up, I kind of see how confusing that was for me to just kind of like know like what is like exactly family. So yeah, like, for me that was kind of it. So even now for me, just I feel like I'm still trying to discover, you know, what is family that's not like Christianity, you know, like Kingdom Movement, for example, in Mozambique, you know, because for me that's where I learned about like having family that's not your blood relative, you know. So it's I just feel like I'm still in this journey of figuring it out.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll talk about me personally, and then what I think like kind of the defining marks of family might be. But I think growing up, my family was definitely, it's funny because like something about Africa that I really think is kind of a cool perspective that would not fly in the States is, okay, so like you have I'm already going off on a tangent, sorry. But like if there's a kid out in the street, right, and he's doing something he shouldn't, there's no like, what would you say? There's no problem with just some lady walking down the street to be like, you know, like, Wanaka, knock it off. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a problem. In fact, you should do that, right? Because you're looking out for someone else's kid. But if you were to correct someone else's kid in the States, bro, you'd probably get like sued or something. It's very much like within your cluster. So your immediate family, so mom, dad, siblings, maybe grandparents, there's room for correction. There's room for like that space to be the place where that stuff happens. But outside of that, there's really been kind of a stripped away authority. People don't have necessarily. So the family becomes, depending on how healthy it is, a very tight-knit place, but it also becomes a very defining place. Your parents, your siblings, I feel like become really the things that shape you, right? And the individualism of the States kind of creates this, you know, feeding into identity, like yourself. You are supposed to kind of make your own identity. But for me personally, I feel like my parents definitely encouraged me in all the right things. They really wanted to make sure that I grew up in faith, you know what I mean? And I think it just became, I love my family. I don't know anything outside of it, right? But I also grew up an only child, right? I didn't really have like all these people around me all the time. So I feel like it was either my very close friend group that really kind of shaped me, and then my parents as well, right? Whether it be through personality or how I was raised. But I can definitely see how that made me an independent person. My mom's a very strong-willed person. I'm also a bit strong-willed. So you can see how they shaped you personality-wise. Right? But I think the biggest aspects of family that I think carry over into all aspects of life, and how I can see it in my own family, is like, one, family is a definition of loyalty, right? Like most tribalism is built around loyalty to blood, right? That's a huge thing. Like, you're my family, even if I don't like you, right? You annoy me. You're the cousin I don't want to play with. You know what I'm saying? But if someone were to punch that cousin in the face, it's on, right? You know, family's coming to get their back. And that is so unique to family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nowhere, no other dynamic, no other community would you not really even get along with someone but feel an obligation to them, if that makes sense, right? And then I think it is, in the African setting, like, it is very much like your parents have authority over your life. Like, that authority exists in the States, but it's almost being chipped away more and more and more. Like, even to the point where it's like some parents are getting sued that they're not letting their kid change their gender at like the age 10. You know what I mean? Like, that authority is being taken away from parents in a way. And thankfully, that's not how it is so much for our family. But like, there is a hierarchy, if you will, right? That there is people who have gone before, who have experiences that can speak to the younger generation, but that younger generation also has passion and energy that can bring a new dynamic to the family, right? And I think that's a part of family dynamic that exists in all families, right? That there is kind of a hierarchy of learning, let's say, the grandparents have taught your parents who teach you that, and it goes on from generations. So there's loyalty, there's kind of a hierarchy of learning, if you will, and there is an authoritative structure to it as well, right? It's not just everyone's on an equal playing field and everyone has the same knowledge base, if you will. And I think, so there's loyalty, there's hierarchy, there's love, right? And love, in the definition of family, isn't just like, oh, I feel really good right now towards you, right? Like, there are times my mom ticked me off, but like, I would never say that I didn't love my mom. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And so it's interesting that within our families that have raised us, love is not defined by how we feel towards someone. But when we talk about romantic relationships, it's always based on feelings. You know what I mean? So anyways, which is the person you're going to start a family with? You get it. But anyways, so I think there's love, there's loyalty, there's hierarchy or structure. I don't know. Can you guys think of any other things from your perspectives that are defined by family? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah? This is me, Paulo. I'm glad you prefaced that in our earlier conversation. I'm a details guy because I'm already bringing it into this. So with that definition, right? So we have loyalty to each other. We have mutual love for one another, mutual respect. There is, let's just say, a structure of learning from each other. How do you think we as Kingdom Movement specifically, and then the people of God generally, can reflect family? Because I think the Bible is very, very clear that God is not interested in building a religious institution. He's interested in creating redeemed family. And we'll talk a ton about that in the biblical series as a theme that's coming up later on. But I want to specifically talk about it right here. How does redeemed family play out within the disciples of Jesus dynamic? Because that's what we're supposed to be, right? The Bible makes that clear. But what does that look like when you don't have that blood tie to make you kind of like, I have to like this cousin, or I have to like my brother and sister? But that's kind of the language Jesus and the early apostles are using for the church as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, I feel like that it's really tied to one of the big thing about the Bible, and I feel like Paul talks a lot about it, which is justice. Justice in the sense my favorite definition of justice is just to give someone what he deserves, and so let's bring that into like just now as a family, so we have, if we are really God's creation, and we're all sharing God's image and everything, so the things that you deserve, I kind of deserve it, the same way you kind of enjoy the place that God made, like the earth and all the fruits and the trees and everything, you kind of have the same right, because we are all created by God, and God placed everything around here to kind of come and help us, in feed, we feed out of all those things, so I just feel like it's taking that perspective that even though, because I earn more money, because I have money, I have ability to cultivate the earth, to do all these things, I have the responsibility to make sure that this person, is also, I'm providing justice in the sense of the things that I am able to have, I'm providing for this person who can't, enjoy all these things, so for example, if I can work and I can be able to buy a fruit, that someone else cannot be able to buy, because they can't work, so as the person who knows that person is equal to me, that person is, it's part of this family, and it deserves the same things, that I kind of enjoy, so I will take that and I will provide for that person, so I just feel like this idea of family, redeemed family, starts from there, from the sense that we have to understand we are all part of this big family. So whatever that I am able to, and my brother is not able to, because probably they are unemployed, probably they are in prison, probably they can't walk and everything, but because we're all part of this family, we have all this, I have to fight for them, what you were saying about family, I have that responsibility to provide for them. So I just feel like that's how I would see
Yeah. Few Americans could probably hear that. This one included.
So I really love this topic of family because it brings a lot of aspects to it. So I think the media lately encourages solitude and being alone. And very often we fall into that trap of being alone, because I think that's where the devil can work on you most, because he knows that there's no one you can turn to help you. Because you have put yourself in this box where you don't want to be open with anyone and stuff. I still struggle with vulnerability, but I think that is what he's trying to stop, because he knows in vulnerability is where God can work most. So when it comes to like family, it's like a community that is, everybody seeks belonging. And usually like when we are in this place in life and walking the walks of life, we want to belong somewhere. So very often we belong where we're most accepted, and we belong where we're most shown love, and we belong where we're most, where the first people that take me in is where I will choose to belong. Even if it's wrong, even if it's not good for me, I will still choose to belong. So when it comes to like the kingdom movement and the church at large, it's creating this place where people can feel like they belong. And that is what the kingdom movement has provided for me personally. But it's like creating this environment where somebody can know that if I go and turn to them, I will not be judged. If I go and turn to them, I'll be shown love in a way that I haven't felt before, or in a way that I probably didn't get at home. So it's like creating this environment where like people can openly be themselves and still be able to receive what it is they long for. Because I think a good example of like real family is like Jesus. Jesus could have easily walked everywhere alone, and he could have been able to do everything alone, but he chose to have a community of people around him, surrounding him, to lift him up in everything that he did. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like he still had people around him, and he still had people he called friends, because he knew the value of family and community. I think that's how I see it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and if you imagine that the Creator God who even the idea of making creation in human beings is this desire to be in community, right? So I think that's not only at the heart of who we are, it's at the heart of who God is, right? He desires to be with us. That's another biblical theme that we'll talk about. But I think, like you touched on a really good point, everyone has a family. You can't exist in this world without a family. So even that aspect of family, you know, it's essential to who we are, because we don't exist without it. But our families can shape us in good and bad ways. The communities that we belong, because every single person belongs to a community. Even if that community has rejected them, their origin starts in that community. And I think at the end of the day, the brokenness we see in our world, the issues that we personally struggle with, are all things that have happened within community, if that makes sense. Why do people reject the church? They reject a community that they feel has rejected them, right? Or why did people turn to the FD Park crew, right? Like you said, because those people, in a way, have accepted them, whether they are accepting them for something they can get from them or not, whatever. We'll talk about that. But like, they feel accepted. They feel like this group of people has brought me in. They see me for who I am, and they haven't turned me away, right? And I think when we talk about the love of God sees us as we are, whether we try and hide it or not. And we often think of it, okay, if God sees me for who I really am, he's going to reject me, right? That's when we walk away from God. But if we, as the community of God's people, his representatives, his image bearers, show that no, when God sees you, he actually wants you, right? And that doesn't mean that there isn't need for change, for correction, for growth, but it's done in an environment that says you will always belong here as long as you want to stay here, right? And I think most people, if they walk away in an environment like that, they're walking away because they don't want to grow, if that makes sense. But we as the church have to be really, really careful, because our side of the kingdom movement or whatever is that we don't become so fixated on fixing people
Yeah.
that we just become about, are you checking the boxes we want you to check in order for you to belong? It's a more, we have to always remain a community that says, you will always belong here if you choose to stay here, right? Because we're never going to give up on you because we don't believe God's given up on you. You know what I mean? And I think that's really, really important when it comes to what is the kind of family culture we're trying to create, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if this question is coming about like how the Kingdom Movement family has impacted our life.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But I just feel like what you guys were saying, you know, it kind of resonates to what I experienced, you know, in the Kingdom Movement, because I was just this kind of lonely wolf, you know, and just going through these bad things, you know, and even thinking about, you know, taking my life, you know, and everything, because I was just so alone, you know. So I just found this really big great family, you know, that people who really cares about me, you know, people who, someone would call me like, hey, how are you, you know, how is everything going and everything, you know. And for me, that kind of came and changed me, you know, in the sense like I'm not here, you know, I'm not alone here, you know, but I have someone, I have a group of people who, you know, I can relate to, you know, but also that really, really cares, you know. And they, whenever I go and share something, you know, they will really first listen, and whatever they will say to me, it's not because they want me out of the family, it's not because they want me to humiliate me or anything, you know, but it's because these people really, really care about for me, you know, and whatever they say is because they think that's a very important thing for me, and that those are very important steps for me to take.
And I think that's, if you can get anything out of this conversation, all of us, I think it's, where is our heart's posture? We talked about that in the last one. Is our heart's posture for the good of that person, or is it in, because the reason why we stand in judgment over people, I would say 99% of the time, is to make ourselves feel better. It's a heart posture to put ourselves in a place of superiority, to fulfill the needs of our own insecurities. But if we as a community can be vulnerable, to be okay with our insecurities, not to say, you know, we don't need to change, but to say, I am insecure in this, I recognize that, but I'm not going to stop that, allow that to stop me from loving you or to tearing you down, because that really isn't building me up at the end of the day, you know what I mean? And I think people are desperate to find community where they can be themselves, in the sense of, I did this, if you really dug deep into my heart, this is who I am, or this is what I've done. And for the person at the other end of the table to look them in the eye and say, yeah, that's not great, but I still love you. Like, we can do this together. We can work through this together. It's not the end of you, right? It's the beginning of healing. It's the beginning of transformation. Because I think most people don't want to stay where they're at, but they don't know the way through as well, you know? And I think, unfortunately, both in the States and I'm sure here, the church at times has failed to love people where they're at, and wanted to, you know, stand in judgment over them, whether they recognize it or not, you know, whether it's, you know, silly things like, are you wearing the right clothes? Are you chewing gum in church? You know, are you putting on the appearances that make you look spiritual or holy? Even, you know, the idea of this man of God kind of situation. Yes, I do believe a pastor is in an authoritative position, but Jesus makes very clear what that authoritative position is. It's a servant to all. And a servant really is meant to lead by example, right? So if the man of God is unwilling to be vulnerable himself, the sheep, the flock or whatever, are going to struggle to be vulnerable as well. So if we put these guys on pedestals, or women on pedestals, and view them as perfect beings or extra holy or whatever, like, one, we're setting them up to fail because they're not. And if they can't be vulnerable, because if they're vulnerable, then it's a failure of their position, which isn't true, but that's how they would view it. And then two, it creates this idea of like, if you're not this, then you're not holy, or that God doesn't want you, or you're not spiritual or whatever, you know? So yeah, it's a challenge. But I think part of the solution is not to critique and criticize only. I think sometimes those things have to be voiced, but it's more to show a different way. And that starts with us, right? It starts with, let's just be a different kind of family, and people will see that that's what they really actually have wanted their whole lives, right? And I think I'll let you guys talk, but later on I'll share just how that really became the hope for me, is that it wasn't just a concept but a reality. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts?
So you said something about like how the church is so fixated on people's actions rather than like their heart posture and stuff. I was watching a video yesterday, I think it was by Jackie Hill, and she was speaking on her book, The Gay Girl, Good God. And she was saying that she's writing the book to make people understand that my salvation has nothing to do with my actions. My salvation has everything to do with the fruits of the Spirit. You'll know I'm saved through how my heart is and how I show who God is through my actions and stuff. And she was saying the church is so fixated on, are you wearing the right clothes? Are you doing the right thing? And are forgetting about the fruits of the Spirit. And they look at people who wear the right clothes but don't show the fruits of the Spirit, and often forget that that's what salvation is about. And I think that's like a big thing on there, because in places like that where you have to do something in order to gain people's trust, in order to be seen as somebody that can be accepted into family, a lot of people run away because it's like, you want to change me, why? Because it's not from a place of love. It's like, oh, if I go to church, they're going to tell me not to wear this. They're going to tell me I need to change this. They're going to tell me not to do this, but forget that they don't see the love that is coming from the church anymore. Because it's no more from a place of love.
And I think, I want to ask a probing question quick, but I think some of that too on the church's end has come from this idea of like, some of the things that they want to correct, let's just use that terminology, isn't wrong, right? Like some of those things are unhealthy in people's lives, but people can't receive that until they know that you love them, right? Exactly. And if we start with correction before love, people can't receive even the good things. That it's the idea of the pearls to the pigs. You're throwing something valuable to someone who can't receive it, right? And until someone can receive what you're trying to give them, until they can see the value of what you're holding, because a pig can't honor a pearl, right? It sees no value in it. It can't eat it. It just spits it out. Until they can see value, then people can't receive what you have to say. You know what I mean? Jesus isn't calling people pigs in that scenario. He's saying you're throwing something valuable to something that can't receive it at the moment. But what my question I want to maybe present to you guys is, why do you think we as the church, I'm throwing us in there as well, right? Why do you think we struggle in getting these two things kind of mixed around? Does that make sense? So like, why do you think we at times fail to love first and we kind of focus on maybe correction?
I feel like the first thing is that it comes with the control thing, with control. I don't know if it's objectivity is the right word, but the fact that we kind of, the way the world works is like, for example, for you to be worthy of having this amazing job, what do you need? You need to have this really amazing diploma from this really good school, and then you need to you have this experience with this group of companies, specific companies, and then you gather all the things to be able to get this amazing position, that you want, So it's a very married thing, you have to deserve something, and I just feel like it comes from that. We're kind of like taking that and trying to apply in our Christianity, in the sense that, for you to deserve heaven, or for you to deserve, salvation and all those things, you have to dress like this, you have to do like this, and you have to do this and this and this and this, and then
you gotta fit the part, basically.
Exactly. That excludes the hard work that we need, which is love, which is like a choice and a hard thing that you have to do, so that brings a little bit of comfort for us, like, I don't have to do a lot of things, I don't have to go through this hard work, just choosing to love this person, even though the person did something, first not just go and tell him, no, this is you're wrong, but first showing him love and then calming. It's just this dance that our mind, it's not used to, so we just go to these practical things, like, hey, you have to dress like this and do this and that and that and that. And then when you do all those things, then you're holy, then you're this, and then you have all these titles, you're a man of God and everything. So I just feel like it comes from that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's like a misunderstanding of who God truly is. So like from a young age, I was taught that a Christian looks like that, a Christian does this. So I thought I had to be perfect in order to come to God. So before I understood who God truly is, when bringing somebody to the kingdom, I also reflected that on them. And it was, you have to be perfect to come to God, without actually saying you have to be perfect to come to God. So it was difficult to love somebody before correcting them. So it was, before I can love you or before I can show you the love of God, you have to be perfect. So I think it's just a wrong understanding of who God truly is, in my perspective.
And that's so visible, out there. I remember, like, back in time, I would feel much more like, compelled to show love to someone who's dressed like this, for someone that I can clearly see that the person is Christian, than from someone else, out of that, thank God that changed in me, but that's how I would do, because of what you're saying, we have just this perspective, that people who deserve love, first the person has to, act this way, and then that's how we give love.
No, that's great. I think you guys are touching on some really, really important things. And like, even I'll just give a personal example. It is hard, and I think there is not a caveat, but there is this idea too that people have to be willing to receive. So Alita Renter, one of our teammates, she preached a message on the prodigal son this last Sunday, and she made a really, really good point that the son had to recognize where he was at before he could go back to the father. If you don't know the story, read it. It's in Luke 15. But it's this idea that the son had run off, done what he wasn't supposed to, right? He had basically scorned God. And it wasn't until he recognized where he was at that he could go home, right? And so I do think we have to understand that there are people who have run away from God, and they have to wake up to where they're at before they can even recognize that they need to go home. But the point is, just like the older son in that story, we celebrate when those people come home. We want to partner in what God's doing, not just stand outside and be like, really, God, you're going to let that guy in? You're going to let that guy be a part of what you're doing? You're going to use him to reach people? And I think, even walking on campus, to kind of bring it down to our situation, there are people in FD Park that if I'm operating from my default posture, I go, I don't really want to talk to those guys because they don't want to have anything to do with what I have to say. But in reality, the heart of the Father sees them as lost sons and daughters. He doesn't see them as people he wants to reject. I think this is the biggest thing. God does not see those people as people he desires to reject, right? And we can at times see those people as people we want to reject because they are so foreign to us. What they're participating in is so repulsive to us. Maybe we see the destruction of the life cycle. We see them sucking other people into it, and it can cause us to be angry almost, right? And the heart of the Father is to say he doesn't like what they're doing. He doesn't like the destruction that's happening. But his solution to that is not to say, yeah, too bad, your luck's run out and I don't want anything to do with you. The solution of the Father is to say, I want to restore a relationship with you, because only in relationship with me can your life really bring life. You know what I'm saying? And so he sees them as lost children. He doesn't see them as people to reject. And I think in order for us to see people in the right way, we have to see them with the heart of the Father. Not as people that God is ready and willing to reject, but as people who need hope, right? And it may just be some of that is taking the scorn, the mockery that those people can throw on you, because they're going to make fun of you. Like when I go and talk to them, they laugh. I can see their smirks in the background, like, oh, bro, this guy. But the fact that you're even willing to put yourself in a vulnerable position and say, I don't care. Like, I want you to know that God loves you. I want to pray for you. I want to see what's going on in your life. Not there to, preach hellfire to them or say, you need to repent of what you're doing, but to say, what's really going on? Because those people are in that place because something put them there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's important to remember. No one chooses to be an alcoholic. No one chooses to be addicted to drugs. No one chooses to be an abuser, right? At the end of the day, something happened to them that pushed them into that corner of darkness that they can't see their way out anymore.
Yeah.
And the person that the only way that they're going to get out is if someone, you know, Jesus is called the light of the world, right? Only if the light of the world steps into the darkness. So you have, the light has to go into the darkness to help people find a way out. And I think we have to view that as our role as well. Jesus is asking us to partner in that. But if all we see is we have to clean people up before they can even see the light, like we got it backwards for sure.
And one story to remember the book we were reading. He was talking about about the story of the Good Samaritan. You know, it was talking about that story, which is this guy, you know, who fell in the hands of robbers, and then they beat him and everything. And they come these two people who like a part of his community who would be the perfect people to help him, you know. But none of these people help him, you know. People who like were part of his community. But then this person who's kind of an enemy, you know, who would never want to be close to him, who never wants to just, you know, help him, you know. And then that person is the one who helps him, you know, is the one who takes to this best hospital, you know, and then pay for everything and say like, I'm paying for the treatment now, and if there's anything else I have to pay, I will come and I will cover every cost, you know. And then this guy wakes up, you know, the author of the book brings the perspective in this guy, you know, who wakes up in this good hospital, you know. It's like, I would never afford this thing, you know, and I know the last thing I remember someone beating me, you know, and then coming. Now I'm here, I'm like, you wake up and then he sees everything and you just kind of feel overwhelmed, like, how am I'm gonna afford all these treatments, you know? But then someone says, hey, this person who's your enemy came and paid everything, you know? And then, you know, just imagine that shock, you know, like, what? Someone like that helped me, you know. Someone that I would hate them, you know. I wouldn't want to be part of their family, you know. And then he goes out, you know, and then he start helping people, you know. Like, you know what? I was almost dead. I thought I was dead, but this person who I didn't deserve his help, I didn't deserve his money and everything, but that person came and helped me, you know. So that's why I want to share this love, you know, with other people, you know. And I just feel like it comes with that, you know, also, you know, with that humility of just realizing, you know, I was kind of an enemy of the Christ, you know. I was kind of enemy of this family, you know. I would do things, you know, that destroyed me, but also destroyed my relationship with God and everything, you know. But Jesus Christ came and died for me, you know. And now I'm here. I can enjoy this life. I can enjoy the peace that He gave me, you know. So because of that, I want to go out, you know, just share love, you know. I want to go out and just be part of this person who is this love-giving person, you know. And when we have that humility, you know, when we become that humble, we start realizing that the first goal is not just to go and judge them, you know, and everything, but the first goal is to go and share this love, you know, with the people. That's the first responsibility that we have, you know. So I just feel like that helps me whenever I'm going to a campus, you know, whenever I'm meeting people, you know, just like have this compassion, you know, just like, no, man, I didn't deserve this love, you know, but then I have to share this love because someone died for me.
Yeah, I think kind of to bring it back to the family, at the end of the day, what Jesus is calling us to be as His people is a family that reflects that kind of love towards each other. And part of, you know, the exciting thing about that is it's not even always that when we do something outward focused, like to someone who doesn't know the Lord, people on the outside, if we really live like that, right? Like we really take care of each other. We really actually care for one another's lives. It's not just like an obligation we have or something we attend, you know, but we really are a type of family. People see that and they recognize it's something they want to belong to. Why do people act like that? Why do people take care of each other? Why do they go way out of their way to help each other or pray for each other or check up on each other? Like, I want to know more about that. And then inclusion into that family creates the opportunity for them to experience who Jesus is for themselves, right? And that's, I mean, that's the whole dynamic of what we're trying to create with Kingdom Movement is people come and it's an invitation into family, into community, so that people can experience Jesus for themselves. Because once they experience him for themselves, I don't need to convince them. I don't need to break out the 12 points of apologetics of why you should believe. You know, once they believe, they're ready to receive any sort of like theological training or better understanding of who Jesus is. But they just want to know that Jesus loves them before they give a rip about like, you know what I mean? There are people who are intellectual that want to know, like, okay, is the Bible really true? Is this really worth my time? And you can have those conversations. But at the end of the day, I think people want to know more than anything, are they loved by this God that people are talking about? And does that community actually reflect that love? So maybe to wrap it up, because I don't want to run too long, how has the family within Kingdom Movement or the family within like God's people, how has that helped you? You know what I mean? You specific. Maybe I'll start with a very brief story for me. The thing that kept me in my faith, I had an encounter with Jesus, radically transformed my life, but it was the community, especially the 2 youth leaders that I had, that literally I knew if I called them at 4 a.m, they would get up and make me breakfast and like let me in their house, because they so loved people in a way that made people think that they were weird, right? They like, people's parents would be like, oh, I don't know about these guys, right? Because like people don't love like that, right? But they loved me and my friends and kind of our whole group to the point where I'm like, this is what it's about, right? And that helped carry me when I had to leave youth group and I went to Bible college and I lost that kind of community. I felt adrift for a bit. And, you know, when I look at churches and I look at ministry, I just felt like, man, this feels more like a business organization than it does a family, right? And when you were talking earlier, it actually made me think of that dynamic of the merit earned. We've organized our church to be a business rather than a family. But when we went to Mozambique and we were part of that ministry during our training, it just made me realize that it was possible. Like, I knew that this is what it was supposed to look like, but I didn't know if anyone was willing to actually do it anymore. You know what I mean? And then when I saw that it was possible and it really did produce the kind of fruit that I had always wanted in that kind of community, it just made me know with confidence, like, if we do this in Botswana, it will work. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers. Because, you know, it's what Jesus modeled, wanted his people to model. And when we model it, that Jesus didn't just have a ministry, he didn't just have a teaching, he had a model of what his kingdom was meant to look like, right? And when we follow that model, it produces the fruits, right? And so for me, seeing it come to life in Mozambique really encouraged me to be like, no, this can work anywhere, you know what I mean? For sure.
For me, you want to go first?
You can go.
Okay. So for me, as I was saying before, you know, one of the biggest thing that this idea of a family, you know, just having a group of people are really trying to become a family, you know, is just, first it just brought this sense of belonging, you know, and for some reason, you know, I've just met God's love in the middle of the family, you know, that I was part of, you know, the Kingdom Movement, you know. I went there. I was born in a Christian family and everything, you know, and I would go to church and everything, you know, just what you were saying. And I would dress, you know, I would have a haircut, because in Mozambique, part of the code, you know, to become a good Christian is to have a specific type of haircut, you know. I'd have that haircut and everything, you know, just to try to fit in, you know. But it's when I met this group of young people who really, really loved God, you know, who really didn't external, you know, appearance was not the thing that was more important, you know, but love, you know, and caring for one another, you know, and the correction that came in that, you know, that it was not as like destructive correction, but it was a love-based correction, you know. So for me, finding that community, finding people who are living just like that, you know, it changed me internally, you know. It helped me with the bad thought that I had, you know, with taking my own life, you know, and then it just showed me God's love, you know, and also it just made me belong somewhere, you know, because I just feel like that's one thing that I was really looking for, you know. I was living with my uncle and everything, you know, and I couldn't belong there. I didn't feel like I was belonging, you know, there, you know. But just having this group of people that really made me feel like I would belong. I would even like, we had this place we were renting, and we would spend a night together, we called this space, Kingdom Movement Space, and would rent there. The movement was paying it was our office, and most of the times I would spend most of my nights there, spending time with all this group of guys, that really loved me, that's how I was so in love, with this community, and I just felt that a lot of people who are in the campus ministry are really looking for that, are really looking for a place where they can belong, and what you said it right in the beginning, we belong somewhere, either it's a good or a bad place, we try to fit somewhere, sometimes we know this place is bad, this group of people kind of bring bad influence in our life, but because we want to belong somewhere, we just be part of that, And for me, thank God I met this amazing family and I belong to them, and then now we're here in Botswana.
And healthy family always grows, right?
Yes.
It always reproduces. Like a healthy marriage, unhealthy ones can produce kids, but healthy marriages produce healthy kids, right? And those kids produce, as long as they're staying on the family DNA and dynamic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what the Bible says in Book of Acts, Luke, it just says like these people were living this way, we're doing these things, we're living as a family, this amazing community. And what was the result of that? God multiplied every single day people who were being saved, and that just summarizes.
All right, Tshiamo, close us out.
So with me, I had when I met the Kingdom Movement, I just moved from South Africa back to Botswana. So I was in a place where I spent most of my, I want to call them formative years, where I'm growing into who I need to be, and I'm discovering who I am. I'm no longer living under my parents' wings. I'm now my own person. And I didn't know anyone, because it's just a new environment. I had been coming home for like 2 weeks max. So it was like I wanted somewhere to belong, but I also wanted somewhere that would help me grow in my faith, which was very hard to find. But then I met the Kingdom Movement, and in finding that family, I found and understood God's love better. I think that is it for me, because I struggle a lot with being vulnerable. I've always struggled with being vulnerable. But seeing other people living out the love of God and understanding that in this environment, I can be who I am. And nobody will judge me for who I am. And they will correct me in the right way. I won't be scolded. I won't feel like I'm nothing in this place. It helped me grow tremendously in my faith as well, because now I was learning to be vulnerable with God as well, because everything they were reflecting and everything they taught me in family and relationship, I could apply to my Christian walk in my relationship with God. I think that's the biggest thing I took from it. It gave me a blueprint of what a relationship with God could look like if I actually opened up to him, and if I chose to live in love and understand his love for me.
That's awesome. And I think we'll continue to hear many testimonies of that, right? And just for you guys as well, our heartbeat for Kingdom Movement is to create that community that's loyal to each other, that has each other's backs, that we care about each other. Hierarchy in the sense of we want to create disciples that create disciples. We want a family tree, right? That you can look back and say, that's my granddad in the faith, right? Maybe he's 28 years old, but he's the granddad. And just have that mutual love, that mutual respect, that mutual wanting to grow together, right? And so we're excited. We're excited to see what God's going to do. We believe that family is so important in the DNA of what we're trying to create. But I think I don't think we've covered it all, but we've covered a lot. So I think we can wrap it up here. All right. Thanks, guys. Catch us next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is just a brief reminder that if you've had a question come up from this discussion, or you just have a question in general that you want to ask us on the podcast, now is the time to do it. We want to make sure that we get these questions in for the end of the season Q&R, and we cannot wait to hear your guys' questions, to read them, and to be able to respond. But we can't do that unless you send them to us. So make sure if you're a part of Kingdom Movement already, You can personally message us your question, or you can send them via our Instagram, and we will make sure to read those, and hopefully we will answer your question on the season finale question and answer, question and response episode. All right, thanks guys.